Soren Kierkegaard. His life and works will be the topic of our present video. So, let's get a deeper look. Let's have a look at his early life. He was born on May 5, 1813, in Copenhagen, Denmark, and raised in a strict Lutheran household. He was deeply influenced by his father's piety and melancholy. For education, he attended the University of Copenhagen, initially studying theology but became increasingly interested in philosophy. Let's have a look at his major works. Either or explores the aesthetic and ethical stages of life through a series of pseudonymous letters and essays. Its key themes include the aesthetic life focused on personal pleasure and the ethical life centered on moral responsibility. The Seducer's Diary and the rotation method are among its notable sections. If we dive into details, aesthetic stages, represented by A, who lives for personal enjoyment and aesthetic pleasure. His writings include reflections on art, music, and seduction, whereas ethical stages, represented by Judge William, who advocates for a life of commitment, responsibility, and ethical duty. He writes letters encouraging A, to embrace the ethical life. Fear and Trembling is another one of his major works. It analyzes the biblical story of Abraham and Isaac, focusing on the nature of faith. Its key themes are the teleological suspension of the ethical, and the night of faith. Notable concepts: the paradox of faith and the leap of faith. Let's dive into details. Faith versus ethics. Kierkegaard contrasts the universal ethical duty with the individual's leap of faith, exemplified by Abraham's willingness to sacrifice Isaac. Knight of faith. A figure who makes the leap of faith, accepting the absurd and trusting in the divine despite the lack of rational evidence. Next we have the concept of anxiety. It discusses the concept of original sin and the nature of anxiety as a precursor to existential angst. Key themes: the difference between fear and anxiety, and the role of anxiety in personal development. Notable ideas: anxiety as the dizziness of freedom. Anxiety and freedom. Kierkegaard explores how anxiety arises from human freedom and the possibilities it entails, leading to a sense of existential dread. Original sin. He connects anxiety to the concept of original sin, suggesting that the awareness of freedom and its consequences leads to a profound sense of guilt and anxiety. Philosophical fragments. It considers the nature of truth and the role of the individual in understanding it, often contrasting Christian and Socratic views. Key themes: the nature of subjective truth and the concept of the absolute paradox. Notable ideas: the distinction between objective and subjective truth. Christian versus Socratic truth. Kierkegaard contrasts Socratic recollection, where truth is already within, with Christian revelation, where truth is given by an external divine source. Absolute paradox. The idea that the eternal truth, God, entered time in the form of Jesus Christ, creating a paradox that cannot be fully grasped by human reason. Last one is concluding unscientific postscript, which emphasizes subjectivity and the importance of personal experience in grasping truth. Its key themes are the limitations of rationality and system building in philosophy. Notable ideas: the concept of subjective truth, and the importance of leap of faith. Subjective truth. Kierkegaard argues that truth is not just an objective reality to be discovered but also a subjective experience to be lived. Critique of system building. He critiques the Hegelian idea of a complete philosophical system, advocating instead for an understanding of truth that acknowledges the individual's subjective perspective. Kierkegaard lived a relatively solitary life, often engaged in intense writing and reflection. He died on November 11, 1855, at the age of 42.